This is a Sword Art Online story, Radiant Valor 2 by Meghan Sly.
Episode 1, Nightmare. November 7th, 2025, Endless Forest. Ryu, a boy with dark hair and golden eyes, finds himself in a sea of trees, shrouded in darkness. Aimlessly, he wanders through the dark forest.
Where am I? This seems so familiar.
Coming to a small clearing, Ryu stops when he sees a black-haired boy standing alone, wearing blood-stained armor.
Hey, are you alright?
Ryu stops in front of the boy and reaches out to touch him, but stops when the boy suddenly looks up at him with a terrified expression on his face.
You killed me. What?
Just then, 3 more players, 1 boy and 2 girls, wearing blood-stained armor appear around Ryu. All of them stare at him with mournful gazes.
You killed all of us.
No, please. I didn't mean to. I just couldn't stop myself.
At that moment, the black-haired boy gasps as someone behind him jabs a shining blade through his chest. Ryu watches in horror as the boy holds up his hand and points at Ryu, right before he dissolves into nothing. With the boy gone, Ryu's eyes grow wide in horror when he sees himself standing before him, holding the blood-stained dragonheart blade. Breathing heavily, Ryu stares into the glowing eyes of his doppelganger.
No, this can't be.
With a malicious grin, Ryu's double suddenly starts cutting down the 3 other players. With each strike, one of them screams and vanishes into nothingness.
No, stop! Please, stop it!
Once all of them are destroyed, Ryu's duplicate turns on him and holds up his radiating sword to his throat.
You're a murderer, Ryu.
Ryu's heart stops as his breath catches in his throat.
No! There's no point in denying it. Thanks to you, those 4 players lost their lives in Sword Art Online. They're gone forever because of you, a killer. No, stop!
Sweat dripping from his temples, Ryu realizes his shadow double is gone. Glancing all around him, Ryu looks down and gasps at the sight of the blood-stained dragonheart blade in his hand. Frantically, he tosses the great sword away from him. Before the blade hits the ground, it suddenly vanishes.
Where did...
Crying out in pain, Ryu feels a blade pierce him in the back. Nothing comes through his chest, but it seems as if the sword is cutting deep into his soul. Glancing over his shoulder, Ryu breathes sharply when he sees the hilt of the dragon blade sticking out of his back. As the howling wind swirls through the forest, an eerie voice consumes Ryu's mind.
A killer. A monster.
Just then, the dragonheart blade bursts into flame, causing Ryu to fall on the ground, writhing in pain. Looking down at his hands, Ryu's eyes grow wide as hard scales start forming on his hands. Desperately, Ryu tries to rub off the scales, but they continue growing onto his arms as sharp claws appear on his fingertips. Suddenly, great pressure on his head. Ryu clutches his head tightly as 2 long horns stretch out from his skull. Ryu cries out in pain as 2 massive dragon wings sprout from his back. With his entire body throbbing in excruciating pain, Ryu helplessly transforms into a terrifying dragon.
No!
In pure agony, Ryu releases a thundering roar into the dark abyss above and around him. November 7th, 2025. Japan, Tokyo. Ryu's house. Drenched in sweat and panting hard, Ryu shoots up in his bed.
No!
Eyes frantic, Ryu stares forward as his heart pulses in his temples and chest. Swallowing and trying to slow his breath, Ryu sets his elbows on his bent knees and rests his hands in his damp hair.
That's right. Today's the anniversary.
Ryu looks up when he hears a knock on his door and his mother's voice.
Ryu! Have you gotten up yet? You're going to be late. Katsumi's already waiting outside.
Tell her I'll be out shortly.
Okay, but hurry up.
With a heavy sigh, Ryu slowly gets up from his bed. As he does this, he accidentally knocks his atmosphere visor from the side table to the floor. Ryu stares down at it, without moving, to pick it up. His nightmares still haunt his mind.
Monster.
Quickly turning away from his atmosphere rig, Ryu goes about getting ready for the day. In a daze, he manages to shower and dress himself in his dark blue school uniform. After quickly brushing his teeth, Ryu grabs his bag from his desk and dashes down the hallway. Entering the kitchen, he snatches a banana and a muffin from the table and tosses them into his bag.
See you later, Mom.
Make sure you apologize to Katsumi for making her late again.
I will. Bye.
Ryu closes the door behind him and stops on their small porch. Katsumi, a brown-haired girl with long wavy brown hair, stands beneath a tall cherry blossom tree in stone courtyard between their houses. She hasn't noticed Ryu yet, and he doesn't move towards her. He stares at her with sorrow-filled eyes.
Kat, someone like me doesn't deserve to have someone like you in my life.
Just then, Katsumi turns and makes eye contact with Ryu. Her face lights up with a smile.
It's about time.
Ryu makes his way over to her.
Especially considering what I did to you on this day 1 year ago.
As Katsumi moves to him, he glances down at the cane she grips in her shaky hands as a support to walk.
Sorry I'm late. Again.
I'm used to it by now.
The two of them start walking down the street side by side. Ryu walks slower to match his pace to Katsumi's limping.
You know, you really should just head to school without me. I'm notoriously late, but I know how much you like to be early.
What kind of girlfriend would I be if I left without you?
A smart one. I'm totally fine if you want to go on without me every morning. Besides, it takes you longer to get places now.
Honestly, Ryu, I'm okay with waiting for you, even if we are late. Saki can just cover for us, like always. Besides, I just know you'd be hopelessly lost without me.
Katsumi reaches her hand over to pat Ryu on the back. As her hand touches his back, Ryu's mind flashes back to his night terrors, and the sensation of the dragon heart blade plunging into his back overwhelms him.
No!
Ryu, what's wrong?
Breathing deeply, Ryu takes a moment to bring himself back to reality. Slowly, he stands upright and faces Katsumi with an artificial grin.
I'm fine. Just a little jumpy this morning.
A little? Ryu, I barely touched you, but you acted as though I wounded you. Are you sure you're alright?
Yeah, I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be?
Suddenly, Kasumi smacks Ryu's arm with her cane. He turns to her, blinking in shock.
What was that for?
You're lying to me! Now, tell me what's wrong.
Nothing.
Ryu.
You're not gonna let this go, are you?
Nope.
It's just... I've been having the nightmares again. And since today is...
The anniversary of the day SAO ended.
the day I hurt you and killed those innocent players.
Katsumi moves closer to him and takes his hand in hers.
Ryu, I thought you had moved past this.
So did I. But I guess some things will never leave me.
Before Katsumi has a chance to respond, Ryu starts pulling her along down the street.
Come on, we better keep moving. We're already late enough as it is. Because of me. So much pain and suffering is because of me.
November 7th, 2025, Japan, Tokyo. High school. The activities room. Within the cluttered activities room, Ryu sits on the wide window, while Katsumi sits in a chair nearby. Lounging on one of the long couches is Saki and her younger brother Akio, 2 cushions over. Both of them have black hair and green eyes. Mariko, a tall girl with bright blue eyes and a long blonde ponytail, sits on the other couch. All of them are eating pieces of their lunches.
I might not be able to cover for you two forever, you know. Mr. Yakamoto seemed particularly suspicious today. What's the excuse this time?
Ryu's heart skips a beat as he thinks back to the morning's events. Silent, he turns to look out the window.
We were just distracted is all.
Really? Why is that?
Don't tell me you guys were kissing.
And if you were, some of us don't necessarily want to hear the details.
No, that's not. It's just... Ryu woke up late again.
Honestly, it's a miracle the both of you are still together. You're such polar opposites.
Opposites attract, they say.
Either way, after everything both of you have been through these past 3 years, it's nice that you have one another.
Well, as cliche as it sounds, it truly is a dream come true.
Ryu glances over at Katsumi as she smiles sweetly at him. He returns her smile and then turns back to the window. His smile fades.
Cat may be my dream, but how can I delight in being together when my life is still haunted by the nightmares of my past?
Deep in thought, Ryu looks down at his open hand. For a split second, the image of his hand appears to be stained with blood.
Will I ever be free of these terrors?
Ryu!
Huh? What?
Sheesh, you're acting more like Katsumi than Katsumi is.
What's that supposed to mean?
Usually you're the one getting lost in thought, but lately it's Ryu.
Maybe he just has a lot on his mind.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Clearing floor 19 in New Aincrad.
We still need to find a way to beat the boss, though.
We almost beat it last time. We were so close.
Maybe you could try using that new spell on your greatsword, Ryu.
At that moment, Ryu's nightmare-filled mind makes him think that he is holding the Dragonheart blade in his hand. Blood drips from both the sword and his hand. Releasing a quiet breath, Ryu blinks away the hallucination.
Actually, I can't log on today.
What?
Why not?
Well, I've just got loads of homework to do.
You've got to be joking.
Seriously, Ryu, you're passing up on a VR MMORPG for homework?
Saki is right. Ryu's acting more and more like Katsumi with every passing moment.
With a concerned look on her face, Katsumi stands and faces Ryu. Blocking his view of the others, Katsumi sets her trembling hand on his forearm.
Ryu, is this about the nightmare?
Ryu quickly stands and moves to the center of the room. He faces the others with an artificial grin on his face.
You guys caught me! I'm totally kidding. Like I'd honestly pass up Elfheim Online for homework.
What a relief.
You sounded so serious. Almost had me for a moment.
In the corner of his eye, Ryu sees Katsumi stare at him with a frown. He spreads his false grin wider.
We're definitely going to beat that boss today. This will be a day to remember. And a day I can never forget.
November 7th, 2025, Japan, Tokyo. Ryu's house. Sitting on his bed, Ryu stares down at the hemisphere visor in his hands.
Come on, Ryu, snap out of it. The Dragonheart blade is gone.
In the side reflection of his visor, Ryu sees 4 shadowed figures appear. So are we, because of you. Suddenly out of breath, Ryu whirls his head up to look around his room. He sees no one. Panting, Ryu shuts his eyes.
It's just in my head.
Slowly, Ryu opens his eyes and looks down at the hemisphere visor once more.
The others will be waiting.
Hesitantly, Ryu secures the hemisphere on his head and lies back. He lets out a long sigh as he shuts his eyes.
Link, start!
November 7th, 2025, Elfheim. New Eingrad. Floor 19. Ryu and his 4 friends fight their way through the winding hallways of a giant dungeon. As they turn a corner, several lizard monsters descend from the ceiling and charge at them.
Alright, Radiant Valor, let's finish them off, like the rest.
In her sylph form, Saki dashes quickly around the monsters as she slashes them with her blade. Akio, now a leprechaun, uses his sturdy shield to block a monster's attack and then quickly counters by smashing the lizard with his spiked mace. Favoring magic as an Undine, Mariko stands back and boosts the attack and health of her teammates using her mage staff. As an imp archer, Katsumi flies upward and fires an array of dark arrows down at the monsters below. Ryu, being a salamander, has the highest attack power of them all, so he fights on the front lines with his fiery greatsword. Just as Ryu cuts down 2 monsters, he senses a third charging behind him. Spinning around to find the monster nearly upon him, Ryu blinks in amazement as an arrow soars through the air, strikes the creature in the back, and destroys it.
I owe you one, Cat.
I'm sure you'll make it up to me somehow.
With a grin, Ryu turns his attention back to the battle before him. 4 more lizard creatures appear and encircle him. Ryu is about to charge and attack, but stops when his vision of the monsters suddenly morphs into the 4 dead players from his nightmares. Ryu's eyes expand in horror as they move towards him.
How could you kill us?
Gasping for air, Ryu's greatsword falls from his hand.
Ryu? What's wrong?
The ghost players keep coming towards Ryu.
Ryu, watch out! The monsters!
Ryu's vision of the black-haired boy slowly moves closer to him and reaches out his hand. Katsumi quickly fires an arrow into his shoulder, and he cries out in pain.
No, stop! Don't kill them!
Ryu, you're hurting me.
Don't kill them! They've suffered enough!
What are you talking about, Ryu? Those are monsters.
Turning, Ryu's last breath escapes him as he sees 4 monsters standing where the 4 ghost players were. One of the monsters has an arrow sticking out of its shoulder.
But they were...
Ryu?
Ryu turns back to Katsumi and quickly releases his grip on her arms. Speechless, he stares at her with quivering eyes. Just then, the 4 beasts charge towards them. Ryu reaches for his greatsword but realizes it's still on the ground several yards away. Thankfully, Saki, Mariko, and Akio move in and obliterate all 4 remaining creatures.
What's the holdup?
Why'd you both stop attacking?
Ryu?
Breathing heavily, Ryu stares down at the ground, shell-shocked.
I can't escape them.
I think you dropped this, Ryu. We can't face the boss unless you have your weapon.
Ryu's terror-filled mind deceives him into recognizing his own greatsword as the Dragonheart blade.
No!
Each of Ryu's friends stare at him, slack-jawed and wide-eyed. Katsumi takes a step towards him and reaches out to touch him. Ryu's image of her melts into the dark-haired boy reaching out to him with his blood-stained hand. Ryu's 3 friends morph into the other 3 dead players, covered in blood.
Why, Ryu? Why?
No.
On the brink of insanity, Ryu quickly opens his menu and logs out of LAO. November 7th, 2025, Japan. Tokyo, Ryu's house. In a frenzy, Ryu sits up, rips off his hemisphere visor, and thrusts it across the room. Sweat slides down his temples as he breathes heavily. His mind swirls with the images of blood and whispers of desperation.
Why did you kill me?
No!
Ryu. Trembling, Ryu slowly opens his eyes to find his entire bedroom bathed in blood. Wide-eyed with horror, Ryu turns and gasps when he sees the 4 ghost players standing in the middle of his room. Each of them is splattered with blood. The black-haired boy takes a step forward and points at Ryu.
Ryu, the player killer.
The monster who murdered us!
No, please!
Ryu scrambles backwards onto his bed into the corner and buries his head in his hands.
A killer.
A monster!
I can't escape them. I'll never be free of these terrors.
Just then, a knock comes from Ryu's door, causing him to look up. To his surprise, his room appears to be clear of any horrific hallucinations.
Ryu? Are you okay? Can I come in?
Cat.
Ryu reaches for the doorknob but stops himself. A flash of memory surfaces in his mind of him stabbing Katsumi at the end of SAO. Feeling faint, Ryu presses his hands against the door and slowly falls to the floor. With an exasperated sigh, Ryu collapses with his back against the door.
Ryu, please! Let me in! I can help you!
No one can help me.
That's not true. I'm here for you.
I'm not worth it, Cat. Just let me be.
I refuse to give up on you, Ryu. We've been through so much together already. Please let me help you now!
Using the last of his strength, Ryu pushes against the door to stand. Slowly he moves back, grabs the doorknob, and opens the door. Katsumi gasps when she sees him panting, trembling, and dripping with sweat.
Cat.
Dropping her cane, Katsumi quickly crouches beside Ryu and wraps her arms around his shoulders. His whole body quakes with terror as pain-filled tears well in his eyes and streak down his face.
I can't escape them. Their faces.
Ryu, what do you mean?
Their faces.
And then, all was black. November 7th, 2025, Japan. Tokyo, Ryu's house. Faintly, Ryu opens his eyes to his dimly lit bedroom. The moon shines through his window, casting him in an eerie, pale light. Blinking a few times to clear his head, Ryu turns to see Katsumi, asleep in the chair next to his bed.
She stayed by me.
As Ryu sits up slowly, a damp washcloth falls from his forehead. He clutches it tightly in his hands.
Cat's always there for me, but I don't deserve her kindness or her love.
Hearing slight movement, Ryu turns to find Katsumi looking over at him with tired brown eyes. A tiny smile appears on her face.
You're finally awake.
You didn't have to stay.
Of course I did. You're obviously in a lot of pain right now. I want to help however I can.
You can't help. No one can.
You don't know that for sure. Why don't you start by telling me about your nightmares?
Simply hearing the word nightmares instantly causes Ryu's breath to quicken and his heart to beat wildly in his chest. Seeing this immediate change, Katsumi moves to sit on the bed so that they're facing one another.
I know it's hard, Ryu, but I can't help you unless I know what you're going through. Besides, seeing you in pain like this is unbearable to me. I'm hurting right alongside you.
Ryu avoids her eyes and remains silent.
You're not still upset about attacking me in SAO, right? Because I told you that it wasn't your fault and that I don't blame you.
No. It's not just that. There's something darker shrouding my mind.
Then what?
It's their faces. I can't get them out of my head.
Who?
The 4 players that I killed in SAO.
Oh. You've barely spoken of them.
That's because I tried everything I could to forget them. But they were always there, in the back of my mind. When I was finally freed from ALO in January, I was so focused on making sure that you were alright. After I came to grips with hurting you in-game, and in real life, I fooled myself into thinking my so-called recovery was finished. I distracted myself with joy of being with you. However, the more joy I find in our relationship, the more guilt I feel for what I did to those players.
Ryu looks down and tightens his grip on the washcloth.
Why should I be allowed to experience such happiness after I destroyed the lives of 4 innocent players? I'm a murderer, Kat. I mercilessly killed those players in SAO while knowing full well that they would all die in real life. And now I'm tormented day and night by horrific visions and ghostly whispers. No matter what I do, I can't get them out of my head.
Gently, Katsumi moves closer and sets her hands on his hands.
It's not like you wanted to kill them. The Dragonheart Blade was controlling
No! I can't keep hiding behind that excuse. I'm the reason they're dead.
If anything, Akihiko Kayaba is the real reason they're gone, as well as all the other players who died because of his death game.
That doesn't matter. If it weren't for me, those 4 players would still be alive.
Unsure of what to say, Katsumi leans forward and pulls Ryu into a tight embrace. Heavy tears fall from his golden eyes as he hugs Katsumi firmly.
I don't know what to do, Kat. The voices and visions keep happening. They're getting worse. I'm losing my mind. How can I possibly move on from this? How can I forget the sins of my past?
Sins can be washed away, Ryu. There is only one who can truly forgive your sins.
You may be able to forgive my sins, but how can I forgive myself?
I think I might have an idea on how you can face your demons and overcome this guilt-ridden nightmare.
How?
I think you should visit the families of those 4 players and admit what you've done. Perhaps speaking with the families will bring closure to each of your victims' deaths. Then you might be able to forgive yourself and accept the ultimate forgiveness.
It's worth a shot, but it won't be easy.
That's why I'll be right there beside you, Ryu. You won't have to go through this alone.
Through it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you've always stayed by my side. Why?
Because I love you. That's the only reason I need.
Katsumi leans forward and gently kisses Ryu on the lips.
We'll get through this, Ryu. Together.